A small central New York primary with a big message, a reflection of a divided Democratic Party. It happened in New York City last year. A self-proclaimed Democratic socialist overcoming the establishment in the race for mayor. This year, here at home, Onondaga County legislator Maurice Brown looks to follow in those footsteps, taking on 28-year Assemblyman William Magnarelli in a rare primary for the seat. The 129th district encompasses 2/3 of the city of Syracuse, the towns of Geddes and Van Buren. It's experience versus a fresh take. The candidates are right here. They go head-to-head in a showdown for your vote.
From News Channel 9, your local election headquarters, this is the Democratic debate for the 129th Assembly District. Your candidates, William Magnarelli and Maurice Brown. Here now is your moderator, News Channel 9's Andrew Donovan.
Welcome and thanks to everyone at home for watching, and thanks to the candidates for agreeing to be here and agreeing to some basic rules of engagement. This is a rare debate because this is a rare primary. Maurice Brown, we'll start with you. Why did you decide to take on a respected assemblyman?
Thank you, Andrew. So my decision to enter this race started last July, actually. So after the mayoral primary in the city of Syracuse, my assemblyman put out a letter pretty much saying that everything was okay with the Democratic Party. And to me, I didn't like that. I think that we're in a rare moment in history right now where there's a level of urgency we're not seeing from the Democratic Party. So I'm running to give that urgency for this situation. I'm running because I think that the threats that we're up to federally with the ICE attacks, we need somebody who's going to stand up to these people and show that we're going to fight here in Central New York. And I've not seen that level of fight out of my assembly member. So I'm running because we need an assembly member who's going to have that fight.
Assemblyman Magnarelli, this is your first ever primary challenge for the assembly seat. What's your response to your tenure being challenged?
Well, I think everybody has a right to challenge somebody in a primary, in an election. But I feel this is a very cut and dry type of election. I think my record speaks for itself. I think my opponent is, he's got a lot of talking points that he comes up with when he talks about the Democratic Party, and this is a Democratic Party primary. I don't consider him being part of the Democratic Party. He is a self-described Democratic socialist, an activist with the Working Families Party, and basically he's just trying to take over the Democratic Party. I feel the Democratic Party has done very well in Onondaga County. I'll stand by that statement, and we're going to continue to do well going forward.
Well, let's get right to that conversation, the party division. Assemblyman, what is your definition of being a Democrat?
Being a Democrat is someone who makes sure that things are being taken care of properly, and that's from top to bottom, everybody, and particularly all of the people that are in the middle. The middle class seems to be the ones that are losing out in this day and age. When we talk about affordability, I'm talking to the people who are saying, look we're both working, husband and wife. We've got children. We've got to get them through school. We've got a mortgage. We've got car payments. We're thinking about putting our kids through college. This is the affordability crisis. There are people at the bottom of the ladder that we have to take care of. The poor, the seniors, disabled, and New York State has always done a good job with that. And we're doing a good job with that now. Trump and the federal government is cutting things, and we're trying to fill those gaps. So I feel that the Democratic Party is one that tries to take care of all of the people.
Legislator Brown, your opponent is calling you not a Democrat, so I'll have you respond to that. Are you a Democrat? And then give your definition of the Democratic Party.
Yes, so I am a Democrat, and this, barometer, this bar we're setting for what's a Democrat, I think it's unhealthy. I think it's divisive. If you look at the mayor's race last year, my opponent didn't endorse Mayor Sharon Owens because she wasn't Democrat enough. He actually didn't even endorse her in the general because she wasn't Democrat enough, and I think she's a fine Democrat. I think that being a Democrat means you want what's best for the most of the people. Republicans tend to focus on business, and Democrats tend to focus on people. I think that if you look through the course of our nation's history, we've added public schools, we've added libraries, we've added these things that, help, and I'm calling for an expansion of that. I am a democratic socialist. I don't walk away from that. The people that I model myself after, they're not politicians. They're, Martin Luther King, James Baldwin. These people in history that I look up to, they were democratic socialists. And, whatever you want to call it, fundamentally, we need a better redistribution of wealth in our society, and that's why I'm running for that redistribution.
Assemblyman, do you want to respond to previous endorsements in the mayor's race? He mentioned that you wouldn't endorse in the last year's mayor's race.
First of all, that's not quite true, okay? I did not endorse the mayor in the primary, but I think it was within a week we were having lunch and discussing how she was going to go forward. No one ever asked me to endorse her. If they had, I would have, and I told her that. The bottom line, I supported her as a Democrat in the mayoral race.
Legislator Brown, one of you will win. When that happens, and if it's you, how do you unify Democratic voters? Clearly there's a divide. Clearly people will vote for each of you. How do you unify the party, but then also attract some Republicans to perhaps vote for you in November if you're the nominee?
Yes, so what Mayor Mamdani in New York City, he kind of put the blueprint out as to how to run as a democratic socialist, but also how to govern. So I find that I'm getting a lot of cross-party support because people know my values. People know what I stand for. I think that healthcare is a human right. I think that housing is a human right. You don't have to wonder where I stand and whether or not we agree on my position about data centers or we agree on my position about, how we go about housing. People like to know where their representative stands, and that's what you're going to get with me. I show my cards because I think the district deserves to know where you stand. And, my representative, he has this pattern of, let's wait and see the bill, where I'm going to be out front. I'm going to be someone who's going to take lead on these climate laws. I'm going to take lead on getting a data center, moratorium or ban passed, because the community deserves to know where their representative stands. And when bringing the party together, I think we're all going to be able to find that the values that I'm pushing for are more together than they are divided.
Assembly member, you must feel it too, that there's a divide within the Democratic Party, yet in a district that's moderate, congressionally speaking, a moderate district Central New York is in, there's got to be some unifying factor, some way to make sure parties of both sides are perhaps embracing a Republican or a Democrat.
Well, I just think that people are kind of fed up with the way things are going, but what they're looking at and what they're taking it out on us for, basically incumbents, is what's happening in Washington. And I think that that's going to be the unifying factor in the coming election. I have made my position known very well. I'm against what's happening in Washington. I'm against the Trump administration. I'm against ICE. And I have come out for all of those things. And when my opponent says my constituents want to know where I stand, if you don't know where I stand in 28 years, then I got to say I have not been doing a good job, but I think I have. When you talk about education, when you talk about health care, when you talk about creating jobs, those are the things that I've been working for year after year, day after day, over and over again. And I think the people of my district understand that, whether they're Democrats or Republicans. They get that.
Legislator Brown, you were nodding your head when the Assembly member mentioned that if his constituents don't understand where he stands, then he's not doing a good job. Do you have one area of concern where you don't know where Assemblyman Magnarelli stands?
Yeah, so the biggest one to me, I think, is the New York Health Act. The Assembly member in the past has sponsored the New York Health Act, and he was in front of it until 2019 when the Senate took over, the Democrats took over the New York State Senate, and the New York Health Act became a priority. It became possible. It was at that moment where my assemblyman started to falter. It's a moment where I wanted him to lead. I wanted him to use his seniority. By that moment, he already had 20 years experience. He could have championed the New York Health Act, and he could have gotten it done. He chose not to. He chose to prioritize other things, and he might get a chance to describe that, but I think that healthcare is a human right. And I think that we have a duty to ensure every New Yorker is protected, every New Yorker has healthcare. No one should have to go into debt because of healthcare bills, and the New York Health Act would prevent that. It would make it, so that everyone has a chance to see a doctor. But despite the sponsorship, despite the, quote, leadership that we've seen, we've not seen it delivered, and I don't think that's, an accident.
Assemblyman Magnarelli, where do you stand on the New York Health Act?
I'm still a sponsor. I don't understand basically what he's talking about. I've always been a sponsor. Since 2007, I've been a sponsor of that bill. There are problems with the bill that have to be worked out, and I've been trying to work those out for all those years. But when he says it was about to be done, absolutely not. And there were a lot of factions that were against the bill. I continued to sponsor the bill. I continued to stay on the bill. I'm on the bill today. So what he's talking about, I don't understand. I, too, believe that everybody should be entitled to good health care. That's why I got about $450 million to update Upstate Medical Center so that we would have an emergency room that would take care of people who, if they had nowhere else to go, they'd be able to go there. So, I mean, the bottom line here is I honestly don't know where my opponent is coming from. And again, people who know me know that I've been fighting for these things year after year after year.
It does seem that health care is a constant issue, whether it's a presidential debate stage or a different races debate stage. And it doesn't seem, since Obamacare, that anything has evolved at any level of government substantially. What would you say about New York State's efforts to move to taxpayer-funded health care, and should that be where New York moves whatsoever?
Well, I think we were getting there, okay, until Trump came in, and now he's pulling insurance away from about 450,000 people. The New York State legislature tried to put that back into the budget, and we did put some of it back into the budget. Am I happy with the way that's turned out? Not 100%, and we're going to continue to work on that when we go back in session in January.
To be fair to the state budget, he pulled more money out than is recoupable by New York State. That's a fair statement, right?
I think that's a fair statement.
Yeah. Legislator Brown, your response to the congressman's answer on the speed at which the health care situation has evolved.
The Assemblyman. But the
you.
Assembly member is correct. And I'm not questioning his desire, I'm questioning his effectiveness. I think he has 28 years seniority. I think if there's anyone in the New York State Assembly who could get it done, it would be Assemblyman Magnarelli, and he hasn't done it. I think that it's an ineffectiveness. I do agree. He believes that, no one should go into debt because of health care. I applaud him for getting the money for Upstate Hospital. That's huge, but having a nice hospital isn't as valuable if not everyone has the health care, the coverage to be treated at that hospital. I am challenging that effectiveness, and I'm running because I think that what he's been trying to do for these past 28 years is not working, so we need to try something else. And I think that my vision is a better vision for Syracuse, but fundamentally, we've not gotten it done. The New York Health Act is not law. He's been supporting it since 2002, I believe he's just said, 2007. But, 19 years is enough time to get it done, and it hasn't gotten done.
Your response, Assemblyman?
Well, all I can say is I have 28 years of experience in getting things done. I've brought things home to Central New York and Syracuse. And my opponent, who basically hasn't done anything, is saying that he can do it better. I leave it up to the voters.
Saying your opponent hasn't done anything, I will give the legislator a moment to respond.
So that is something we've disagreed on. So when I took office in the county legislature, the biggest thing was government spending and transparency. This was a big fight. That's why in 2024, I worked to kill the aquarium bailout that was proposed by County Executive Ryan McMahon. He wanted $11 million for the aquarium, and we worked to kill that. The bill never came back. I'm pretty proud of that. That's $11 million that we can use towards child care, towards health care, towards things in our community that we need. A lot of my experience isn't in elected office, given I don't have 28 years, but I have worked statewide on coalitions that got, fair elections passed. I worked on a coalition that, for housing justice, we were able to get tenant protections. So I've been working in Albany, working the state legislature since 2016, and that's why I've gotten the support of people like Senator Bernie Sanders. But to say that I've, done nothing, I think it just means that, transparency isn't a big issue to him, but to my constituents it is.
All right, we'll take a break. The candidates probably could catch their breath for a moment, but we'll continue. You're watching the Assembly primary debate here on News Channel 9.
From your local election headquarters, the Democratic debate for the 129th Assembly District continues.
I'm Andrew Donovan, back with the second half of our debate. And just so the audience knows, the candidates aren't silent while we're in that commercial break. It sounds like the two of you have agreed to unify when this primary is over and maybe have an event together. Is that what I heard happening?
I'm down.
We'll see what happens.
All right, we'll see what happens. Assemblyman Magnarelli, you know a major issue for Central New York is housing. Affordable housing as it exists now, but also the growth needed for when Micron arrives. And this topic has come up in your previous debates that you two have participated in. What would you say you would do in a next term to meet this housing crisis moment?
Well, I think the major thing is to make sure that we have enough money put into our housing budget to incentivize the housing that we need, not only in Central New York, but also across all of New York State. With Micron coming in and what's happening in Syracuse, it is absolutely critical. And it's also critical that we do other things as far as legislation is concerned to create the amounts of land that are needed to build on, to make sure that requirements are met in a timely fashion so that developers know that when they come in here, that they can get going and start building. I think those are the things that we need, and those are the things that we need to do in the legislature.
Before I move to your opponent, it feels that housing construction isn't happening quickly enough. Now, Micron just broke ground this calendar year. I know that was probably a first step, but how would you grade the speed at which housing is moving along?
It's not doing well, but I also know that in the background, many things are in play. And I do believe that when it does come, it's going to be fast and it's going to be done. Hopefully we get it done well with the proper requirements being met, but being met in a timely fashion. We've got to move this thing along. And I do believe that private industry, private investment is key to making sure that this happens.
Legislator Brown, your response to this issue of housing?
Oh yeah, this is probably the issue where we're closest, and I just go a little further than he does. So yes, we need to build more housing, but we need to build more affordable housing. We need to build more low-income housing. We need to make sure that everyone in this community is able to get housed. I'm in favor of seeker reform. We've seen the seeker process used to block housing being built, and I think we need to clean that up. But fundamentally, I think our housing problem boils down to a supply and demand problem. The supply is low, the demand is high. We need to increase the supply. I'm in favor of Assemblymember Gallagher's Social Housing Development Authority at the state legislature. It pretty much makes money available for developers. So it's a public developer model where when you're a developer, you have a profit margin. You need to make this much money. When the public is the developer, when the government is the developer, we don't have the profit margin. We're not trying to make money. We're trying to provide housing. So when we do that, we're able to build a lot more housing a lot quicker, and we need it.
Legislator, utility costs are also a number one issue for voters.
Yes.
And the state does regulate utilities.
Yes.
Would you do something differently than what the state legislature or the governor have done so far?
So I'm in favor of passing the Sunny Act. I think the Sunny Act would have made it easier to go to solar, which would make more energy available, thus bringing the cost down. But what we've seen with the CLCPA rollbacks, you know, those are things that keep the cost high. It is cheaper to provide solar. It is cheaper to provide wind. It is cheaper to provide, you know, renewable energies versus non-renewable. And we've not seen that at the state legislature level. I was so disappointed when we rolled back the CLCPA because I know the impacts it has on working families. I am against them, but fundamentally we need to tax our wealthiest earners in order to make the investments we need in our energy, because you are correct. The energy situation is rough. The national grid bills being so high are just frustrating to families, but also me personally with my national grid bill going up so much. But I think the state legislature has a job to do, and we're going to get it done.
Assemblymember, you've been in office as stated a long time. What would you diagnose as the reason that utility bills are so high, and what can the state legislature do about it?
Well, I think the state legislature is already taking steps to do things about it. Rolling back the CLCPA had other parts to it, okay? Including making sure that the PSC is looking at rate increases and making sure what's going into those rate increases. That's fundamental change, and that's something that has to be done. As far as solar is concerned, my opponent just mentioned that. The solar industry was hurt immensely by Trump. He pulled all of the incentives away from solar, away from wind, so all of a sudden that industry, which was a burgeoning industry, one that I thought was really going to help us out, is dead in the water, so to speak, at this point in time. So we've got to look for other things. Governor Hochul has said we've got to look at everything. I believe that's true. Otherwise, our utility rates are going to stay high, and we're not going to be able to do anything about it. So we have to move forward incrementally, always thinking of what we can do better, and then just move forward.
Staying on the topic of energy, Governor Hochul is looking to expand nuclear power generation in New York State, and I think most Central New Yorkers hope that Oswego will benefit from a surge of jobs if the nuclear plan goes through. Assemblymember, how do you stand on the issue of expanding nuclear in New York State?
I have no problem with it. I really don't. I think if there was any part of the United States that is an example of how to do it right, it's been New York State. And 25% of our electrical supply comes from nuclear energy. It's been clean, it's been safe. The crux of the matter is doing it with guardrails around it and making sure that those guardrails are kept. And that's what I think we should be doing going forward.
Legislator Brown, your position on nuclear energy in New York State.
So this is one of the more complicated issues, or at least for me. I am not a climate scientist, so I am learning about this in real time. My understanding of nuclear is that it is better than fossil fuels. It is definitely cleaner than that, but it's not as clean as solar and water and hydro. So I want to move to the best version. But when I speak with climate people, with people who know more about this than I do, they say that the bigger issue is getting off of fossil fuels. So if nuclear is the only way we can get off of fossil fuels, I'll settle for it. But I don't think it's something we should be aiming for. I don't think it should be our goal. Our goal should always be the best thing. And I think the best thing for our future long term is to do more solar, putting solar panels on top of parking lots to make them, more accessible and more useful. But fundamentally, I don't necessarily know if nuclear is terrible. That's not what I'm hearing from the scientists, but we can do better, and I'm urging that we do better.
Legislator Brown, you've already mentioned this in this debate, your desire to increase taxes on the wealthiest of New Yorkers. That's not something you can do as a standalone assembly member if you're elected. And there's a lot of pushback on that idea, especially if big business decides to leave New York City. That could hurt the entire state. So how do you continue with your vision if you're immediately blocked upon election of raising taxes the way you've wanted to?
So if you look around the state, there's actually significant momentum towards taxing the rich. So in New York City, they did put ultra-wealthy tax on second homes valued over $5 million. That was able to target the ultra-wealthy people that, we're looking to tax. I think those people are in New York City for a specific reason. Those people are in New York State for a specific reason. Whether it's the Knicks, whether it's Lake Ontario, whatever the reason is, they're in New York State. They can't recreate it somewhere else. They would have went there. Our taxes were high before we're going to do it, and we're asking them to give a little more. We've seen when we've raised taxes in the past, they don't leave en masse, as been warned off. But if we're going to provide childcare, if we're going to build the kind of housing we need to generate more revenue. We need to raise more revenue. I'm in favor of Assemblymember Meeks's bill, which changes the tax bracket above $500,000 annually. I think if you make $500,000 in a given year, an extra 1%, an extra $5,000 isn't going to kill you, and we need it right now. So we're calling on you.
Assemblymember, what do you respond to your opponent's calls to raise taxes on a certain group of income earners?
Well, first of all, we did raise taxes on millionaires just a few years ago. So that's already been done. And again, if we had to do it again for a small percentage, I would think that that's appropriate, okay? But what my opponent keeps saying is tax the rich to take care of housing, tax the rich to take care of transportation, tax the rich to take care of health care. You're not going to end up taxing only the rich. You're going to be taxing everybody. And that's something everyone should understand here. What he's looking for is to be able to tax enough to fund everything that he's talking about and trying to keep it under the auspices of the state. What I'm trying to say is we need capital investment from companies right here in New York State. We need people here to be working and doing their jobs here, and that's what I want to keep doing.
All right, we have to move right to closing statements. We did a draw earlier. Legislator Brown, you go first with your closing statement.
Thank you. I want to thank WSYR for having us. I want to speak directly to the voters here in Central New York. We are up against some existential threats. We're seeing, data centers be proposed, and those are an existential threat to Lake Ontario. And I believe I'm the person that's going to stand up to those, moneyed interests that are looking to take advantage of our natural resources. Fundamentally, I believe that housing, healthcare, and education are human rights, and I think the role of government is to protect those rights. Right now, those rights are under attack. So I'm running because I think the state legislature is our best vehicle to protect ourselves in this moment, but I'm not running alone. I am thankful that I got the endorsement of United States Senator Bernie Sanders. State Senator Rachel May is supporting me. I have the support of Majority Leader Nodija Hernandez, as well as Auditor Alex Marion. But what I'm really calling on is you. I need you to join this campaign. We need the help. Learn more about our race at www.electmauricebrown.com. Together, I think we can build a Syracuse where we can thrive.
All right, Assemblymember, your closing statement.
Well, I just want to tell everybody again that I'm born and raised here. I've been educated here right through Syracuse University and Syracuse Law School. I've raised my 3 children here. My 4 grandchildren are on all those Christmas cards you get every year. And we love Syracuse, okay? The bottom line here is that I think that my resume should speak for itself. We're looking to do that again for another term to make sure that the people of New York, the people of Syracuse, are getting the education that my opponent talks about. Almost $1 billion for our facilities in Syracuse schools. That they're getting the health care they need, $450 million for Upstate Medical Center, that we're taking care of the things that matter to them, whether it be the regional market, whether it be Schiller Park, which we gave money to yesterday. These are all things that I'm able to do, and I look forward to doing it again.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you, Assemblymember. That does it. That's all our time. Thanks to the candidates for their public service. Have a great weekend, everyone.
Download the WSYR Plus app on your TV to stream News Channel 9 for free. Just go to your smart TV, search WSYR Plus in the App Store, and download to start streaming today.